Okay, Mrs. Bronson Rizzo, we are live.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. Good evening and welcome to the Committee of the Whole meeting for March 1st, 2023. It is currently 4:37. Please stand to pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sorry, I'm trying to figure out who's sitting in my seat. It's Principal Bowen.
Yes, we invited Principal Bowen and Deputy Principal Riley to join us on the dais to make the conversation a little bit easier and give them access to microphones.
I love it. I love it. So roll call, please.
Mrs. Stacy Bronson Rizzo,
Present.
Miss Susan Ravalisi,
Here.
Mr. John Kingston,
Present.
Mrs. Aisha Milbury Ellis,
Present.
Miss Carol Ty.
Present.
We do have a quorum, so we'll continue with the agenda. I think I do want to go out of order. Unfortunately, when I sent some of this information out to everyone, I really didn't set it up as an agenda format. And Ms. Canzini, who is always efficient in everything, got this information out right away, and I didn't bother changing it. So I really would like to, if no one minds, I would like to start with Principal Bowen and Deputy Principal Caitlin Riley, and to see what they may have updated in the school, or what the discussion is with staff, students. Any insight on what their plans are with the school?
Absolutely. Thank you for having us and inviting us to this conversation. I'm going to pass down the list of some ideas that we've been spending a good amount of time thinking through, both as faculty.
Do you have that electronically that
I
I
do.
could?
I emailed it to you.
Oh, you did?
Yep.
Okay, all right.
Yep, to your Outlook. We've kind of spent a lot of time in the past few weeks leading up to February vacation and our time over vacation, talking with our RTA building reps about some changes that we think we can implement this school year to make the climate of the school one that is more conducive to learning and supportive of everybody feeling safer and secure in the school. We also have some ideas to sort of share and plant the seeds about what we're thinking next year in terms of some restructuring that we hope to bring to the leadership team, to our student support teams, and to a few other kind of points of contact that have connections with kids in the building that help make this large school feel smaller for students. And so I think that what is on everyone's mind right now is sort of the immediate where we are in March, the 1st of March now, through the end of the school year. And so we've shared out a handful of goals that we would like to work towards. Many of them do require some financial support to change the way that we're working this year. And so my hope would be to share out and talk through some of the changes we'd like to see in the school this year, and take questions from you on kind of how our process was to get to these, the collaboration we've had with students, with faculty, with our building representatives, and with our central office administrators to support us in kind of thinking through what makes sense for now versus what we are thinking about for next year. We've got a few different models of our structure that we want to maybe tease out and kind of give you a sense of what we're thinking. But I think the main focus for us coming today is to talk about the immediate state of the high school, the climate of the high school, and the culture of the school, and how all those things fit together. All right, so if it's okay with you, I'll kind of go through sort of one by one the different ideas that we're working on, and thinking about that we're able to, we would be able to move forward with if we had the support of the school committee to make some of those changes. And there's plenty of other ideas that do not require financial support that we are also considering in terms of, how we're supervising school during lunch and those sorts of things. But many of them do require some financial support. So that is what we're coming to you with tonight.
And if I could just add, I think that one of the pieces the school committee has recognized for a couple of years now, and actually has given us some support in recent years, is the fact that the high school is basically understaffed based on the number of students that are enrolled here and the degree of need that we're seeing. And the committee has very generously approved a number of additional social workers, guidance counselors, an additional assistant principal position a couple of years ago. And now this, I think the plan that Principal Bowen and Deputy Principal Riley are putting forward today will help accentuate that. And I also think that some of the pieces you're going to share are deficits that the committee has recognized and spoken to me about. And the one that I'll call out is the first one that you have on your list around what are the functions of the security people at Revere High School, what is their skill set, and how does that translate to student needs? So
Yeah,
just want to
absolutely.
share that.
I think I hear very often from many people, whether it's teachers or family sometimes, we need more administrators. We need more administrators. I don't necessarily know in the moment right now if that is the key thing. I think the key thing is we need more adults who are able to get their hands with kids in times of need. That in times of need for de-escalation, in times of need for problem solving, in times of need for getting kids to class when they're taking laps around and they're not getting to class. That doesn't say that there is not a need for additional leadership positions, and we'll talk about that later. But the immediate need, I don't need extra administrators to be, quote, chasing kids around the building. That's not a leadership task, right? What I do need is to re-envision what the security translator role at the high school is. And our vision for that is something Caitlin and I have talked about. Honestly, in the beginning of the summer, we talked about this a lot. We have a vision for changing that role into one that is much more responsible for student support, for mentoring, for case management. And yes, as a presence in the building, is able to manage who's coming in and out of the bathroom, so we don't have more kids in the bathroom than we have occupancy for. How do we make sure we have adequate supervision at lunchtime so that we can keep kids in the CAF if they need to be in the CAF for lunch, and students who want a quiet space can be in the learning commons, and we're not back and forth. These roles, if we change how we think about security and those translator positions to be more of what we're re-envisioning as this campus support staff that is taking on that case management, student support, and mentoring role. We are seeing a way that these positions can be present in the building, have eyes on what's going on, collaborate with administrators when there are situations that are concerning or that we need to respond to, have the capacity to respond to those situations themselves sometimes. And as the position is right now, it's not designed to do that, right? It also isn't designed to, at the pay rate that it is, it's about $15 to $17 an hour is what that rate is, the security translator position. The ask of these folks to do some of the extra work that is really, I would love to get to a place where each of these campus support staff members has a caseload of 10 to 15 kids that they are working with. They know their families, right? They're able to not only be monitoring access to the bathroom and who's in and out, but being able to say, hey, this is the 7th time you've checked into the bathroom today. Like, what's going on? Maybe I need to message your guardian and say, like, he's not in class, and connect with the teacher to call home and make sure that we're having that conversation. That is an ask that is much more in the realm of student support than the ask has been currently made of these folks. So my first proposal would be that we're able to re-envision that role, and at the high school no longer have these security translator positions, but re-envision them as campus support staff positions, increasing the pay to around $23 an hour that would more accurately reflect the work we're asking them to do, and also help in terms of recruitment, kind of getting folks to apply for those positions. We have had throughout the school year, we are currently budgeted for 6 full-time, full-day positions. We have run, on average, 4 of those fully staffed this school year. At times, we've had 5 of those 6 fully, or, filled. We have, I think it has been 3 weeks total where we've had all 6 of those filled. We've had an open position for 2 of those positions since February 8th, and there are currently 0 applicants for that position. Compare that to applications for the family liaison roles that were supported. For the application for the student engagement coordinator position, it's the one that we're funding through the Mass Grad Grant. The number of applications, I think we have 10 or 12 for that position. We have had over 15 for family liaison positions, and we've had 0 in almost a full month. And we've run at this deficit. So I think that thinking about what the role is requires a different ask of those folks, and that also then requires a different level of compensation. So I think that would be the first thing that we'd like to consider. And it continues with our asks, but I want to kind of couch it with that we envision this being a supportive role of students that improves security of the building. But it's not because there are more security guards or security guards being paid more. It's we have a different way that they're engaging with kids, and they're compensated for that. Which brings us sort of to our second goal of really increasing the number of those. We currently, like I said, have 6 in the building. Keep in mind, we're running at 4 right now because we have 2 open positions. We'd like to increase those from 6 to 10 in this new vision of the role as a campus support staff person. And the idea is that we would be able to have those folks collaborating in teams in different parts of the building, right? So we could have a team of 3 that are on the 3rd floor and are working together consistently on the 3rd floor, so they sort of know kids' schedules, they get to know the kids, and remember, they'll kind of each have their own caseload of students that they're working with at a particular time. Another team of 3 on the 2nd floor, and then on the first floor is a little different because we've got this side of the building, which we kind of call the first floor, and then there's the east wing. We think if we had 4 for this space, that brings us to a total of 10. In addition to, we already have the security translator positions that are part-time positions at lunch. There's 2 of those that we have. We see those staying as the current position, the campus support, the campus monitor, I think is the technical term, with the pay rate as is, that they're serving the need very well. I think if we could bring go from 6 to 10 with this campus support staff position, it would be a game changer in terms of how my leadership team is able to interact with them, and through them interact with kids and families and teachers, and just increase that presence. I think it is striking to me how understaffed that team has been. And then the response we get is, oh, we need more security, more security. It's hard for me to hear that as a valid claim when we are not even fully staffed. Do you know what I mean? To be working with students in the way that students deserve to be worked with, which is people who know them, people who know their teachers and their families, and are really digging in and trying to figure out, why is it that you're skipping class, and how can I get you back to that class, and how can we make sure that that teacher is calling your family when you did skip that class to figure out what we need to do to get you back going there. We can't ask that right now, and we need more people. So those 2 sort of fit together, and I maybe will pause there and see if there's questions.
Do I have Stacy to answer? Stacy, I have.
Dr. Kelly, I'm going to ask you if there's any hands up.
There is, Mrs. Gravelisi has her hand up.
Go ahead, Mrs. Gravelisi, have fun.
Thank you, Mrs. Rizzo. Just a question. I think it's a great idea. We definitely do need more bodies walking the halls and checking in with the children, seeing where they are. My question, as far as the additional responsibilities, what, if any, type of training will you give this support staff in, like, de-escalation?
Yeah, absolutely. That kind of jumps down to sort of goal 5, where we'll talk about some professional development.
Okay,
that I'm
that
going to
was
ask
for them.
That's for both for administrator, social workers, counselors, who will then be working with them to do that training.
Okay.
So yes, that is our vision, is that these folks have gone through sort of a training module to be able to engage with kids in a way that they're really not trained right now, to do that.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
I'm putting my hand up.
Ms.
Okay,
Ty.
Ty.
Yeah, thank you. Question, do
Yeah.
you have coverage now of the bathrooms the way you used to have when you were a student and I was a teacher and we'd sit outside the bathroom and as a duty period and
So
count
teachers-
kids who went in and out?
So teachers at the high school do not have duty periods.
Yes.
So there are no teacher duties covering that.
So you never have a
The
provision where they
security-
have
the-
to do
the
that?
Currently, the security translators are most frequently used to monitor bathrooms.
Okay.
What that means is when they're monitoring bathrooms, they're not floating the
Right,
hallways,
right.
right? What that means is when an incident comes up that they need to step away from, now all of a sudden 5, 6, 10 kids, come
yeah,
into the
right.
bathroom. What that means is that we are unable to keep all of our bathrooms open. So we have a building of 2,150 students, right, that are working, generally speaking, on a good day, out of 3 bathrooms. The third floor bathroom, the second floor bathroom, the east wing bathroom, right? That's our baseline, is that we can't have 4 bathrooms open. Our baseline is that we're running now, think of all the things that happen in high school, right, that require someone to step away from that. So
Right.
now the second floor bathroom is closed, and now we've got 2,150 students. And then that leads to issues of a kid who's on the third floor has to now travel down to the first floor. And if we want to, if it should be simple to say, if your class is on the third floor, you should be on the third floor.
Yes.
Can't enforce that if the third floor bathroom is closed most days a week, right? So now now the kid has to travel from the third down, and you can't say, oh, hey, your class is on the third floor, you shouldn't be here. So
I
it
know.
really is this combination of the number of folks.
So, Mr. Bowman, I just want to make sure it's clear that the reason bathrooms are being closed is because there are not enough people to monitor.
Correct, not because they're
Yes.
broken. not
That's
because-
right, yeah, so,
Yes.
That's,
Yes.
if I may, that's one of the major complaints I get from students.
right.
Yeah,
That, and usually it's a high school, so they're students primarily, and they say, why should I have to go down? I'm missing a part of my
yeah.
class.
The lines are long because
And,
there's few, you know?
of course, and I understand why, but I just want to buttress your argument a bit here,
Yeah.
that you certainly do need it.
I just have a
We
quick
can't have
question
that.
on the heels of what you just said. No, go ahead, finish, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Anytime?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I just had a quick question on the heels of what Ms. Ty was saying. What exactly does the security person, the security translator do at the bathrooms? Are they allowed to go into the bathrooms if they see, several people going in at once, or if they notice that somebody's been in there for a long time?
So yes, they can go in, and same as administrators, when we at lunch duty frequently spend, a good amount of time in duty positions, whether it's in the caf or at the bathroom. So I had second floor bathroom duty today, right, from 12:30 to 1. We'll go in. Now, I'm not going to go into the female restroom, right? So all of us, and likewise, like female colleagues of mine, are not going into the male restroom. So there is sort of that limitation of supervision that comes from that. If we had the team of 3 people that are on the third floor, and all of a sudden there's like a group that goes into let's say the girls' room, right, while a male campus support staff member is monitoring, and we would think about the gender breakup of those teams. So now we can easily get someone to go in, as opposed to me having to calling one of the female administrators out of whatever important thing they're in to come and go into a bathroom, right? And so,
Yeah, I just think it's important to parents, because I'm sure we can all attest to the fact that we hear this all the time.
Yeah.
There's a lot of narratives that are floating out there about the high school and conduct and things
Yeah.
that happen. And it's important to have this conversation that we're having right now, and for you to provide these types of details
Yeah.
as to, how things really work, because most of us don't really understand how it's working.
Right.
And therefore, you just make assumptions.
Right.
So I appreciate this. So I would like, as you continue on, to
Yeah.
kind of think of the parents that are out there listening to this, and don't make any assumptions that we know anything.
Yeah, and I'm happy to kind of, if there are assumptions out there that you've heard made that you'd like clarified, I'm also happy to address any of those.
Sure. Well, on that note, while we're talking about the bathrooms, I'm sure we're going to move on from that. One of the concerns that I hear often is about vaping in the
Yeah,
bathrooms.
yeah.
Now, I know that,
Okay, Ms. Melberry Ellis, I don't mean to get off track, but I had some comments on the previous stuff.
What she means before you go on to a topic?
Before you go
we're
on.
still talking about the bathrooms.
Mrs. Bronson Rizzo, I believe that the question Ms. Milbury Ellis was going to ask is still about the bathrooms? Is that okay, or did you want to?
Oh, I thought she was going on a different topic.
No, not yet.
Not yet. So back to my question, one of the concerns that we hear is the vaping in the bathrooms, that there's
yeah.
always kids. I mean, from when I was here, I can recall kids smoking in the bathroom.
Yeah.
It's nothing new. It's an issue that is plaguing every school and every community across America. It's all of our responsibilities. It's the responsibilities of the parents to know what their children are doing, what type of recreational activities they're engaging in at all times and in schools, and to do their part to try not to make that happen. But while they're in the schools, I think parents want to feel that if it's seen, it's being addressed. Yeah. So if you could, in the context of the bathrooms, that's where I'm hearing it all the
Yeah,
time.
no,
I never hear
absolutely.
it anywhere else. It's always about, this is where it seems to be the prime location of where it's happening.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing to lead with is that when administration is aware of individual situations of students vaping, whether it's in the bathroom or in a hallway or in a classroom, those things do happen. That is responded to through the kind of the code of conduct that we have in our handbook in terms of how we respond to substance use in schools. I think the challenge is, like, I'm sitting here right now while you were talking. I promise you I didn't, but I very easily could have taken a hit off of a pen that I
And
had.
I wouldn't have
And
known.
you wouldn't have known if you were looking over that way.
Right.
Right? I think there is a struggle to the way adults are able to manage this now. I will separate that, though, from an individual kid, perhaps, who goes into a bathroom stall, right? We're not going into a stall with a student. We don't have cameras, nor do we want cameras in a bathroom, right? That's a different thing, though, than maybe a group of students who go into the bathroom together. This new thinking about the transitioning the security team to this more kind of campus support team will better help us regulate who is in the bathroom in groups, who is in that in a certain level of frequency that is problematic, that then lets us more appropriately and efficiently address those instances with those things.
And I'll just add that every single time a student is caught with a vape
Right.
or anything along those lines, the parents are called. None of that is withheld from the parents.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Could I ask
So,
about
okay.
could I ask about the composition of the staff you have now? Do you have difficulty, for example, getting more men on the job who are doing this job, or more women, or are you pretty evenly balanced?
In terms of our balance of people, we are slightly lower on male supervision than female staff. However, we are currently struggling to get people. That is I think that is that right now. I wish we were at a place where we were making choices based on the number of applicants we have to balance out the team appropriately.
Yeah.
We aren't close to having that luxury to be able to make those decisions.
So I don't know, Ms. Ty, if you're talking about security people or in general, but I know that before you answer that, Mrs. Brunson Rizzo wanted to weigh in on the piece about the security people.
It was, actually, I was looking for both. I was
Okay.
concerned about, since we were on the bathroom, I was concerned, of course, because we're not going to send we're not going to send a woman into the boys'
Right.
bathroom and vice versa. So I was wondering if there was some disparity in the number of people that you had that made it impossible for you to get, for example, men into the boys' bathroom and women into the girls.
No,
But
not
so
a-
you have enough of the staffing, it's a balance.
Yeah, it is. That is not our issue. I think our issue is just the overall quantity or number of people that we
Yeah.
have to do the work the way we want them to do it.
Yeah, okay, yeah, thank you. Sorry,
Madam
Mrs.
Chair?
Rizzo.
I think it's you,
Okay.
Stacy.
Thanks, I appreciate it. First, I want to say, a lot of parents have asked me about the bathrooms that are now closed. And I just want to say, this is something, it didn't just start this year, last year, the year before. My sons went there 15 and 20 years ago, and the same issue. There was bathrooms that were closed. So I don't want parents to think this is just something starting because there's been trouble at the high
True.
school. It's been a long road and a lot of work trying to get all these bathrooms open, but without assistance or staffing,
Right.
it makes it more difficult. And where do you really need the staffing? I mean, you don't want to take any teacher away from their role to cover a bathroom. And then I wanted to say, I do, Principal Bowen, you said at the beginning about not just hiring people. I agree, you can hire so many people, but if they can't have the personality to build relationships with our students and know how to deal with them, if the students are comfortable with them, it's not worth the body to have. You want to make sure you have people that can build relationships
Right.
and kids to trust. So I really appreciate that comment from you. And then lastly, oh gosh, I'm old.
May I add on to something you said?
Sure.
We were looking, when we were thinking about what an appropriate rate might be for the folks who are in these roles, when we think about some places that folks who are in these roles left to take positions at, working with teenagers, like I love it, Caitlin loves it, most educators do, but it's it's challenging sometimes, especially when they're wanting to do a thing that we don't want them to be doing. And these folks make more if they get a job at Target, if they get a job at Starbucks, if they get a job at Stop and Shop, if they get a job at Market Basket. When we look at what some of those roles are there, and they're not standing in kind of at a bathroom, engaging with kids who are frustrated with them that they're not letting them go to the restroom or move. And so I think that, I just think that's just worth noting in terms of that when you talk about the right people for that job. It's not only the right people, but creating the conditions for them that they want to be doing the job and getting fulfillment out of that work, working with adolescents. That doesn't that happens when you've got your kids that you work with, right? And if you stand at the bathroom all day to let people in and out, you're not getting your kids that you're working with. There's not fulfillment in that role. And so our vision is to, both with the pay increase, but also with the added responsibilities, I hope it isn't seen by many people as added responsibilities, but more fulfilling work by working with kids in a different way.
Absolutely. And then my last comment was calls to home. Whether it's vaping or anything else, it has to be teamwork. And so if students aren't coming to class, or let's say their absence is like 3-4 times, teachers need to make those calls home, because a lot of that can be stopped with any of the other problems. I mean, we all need to, I wish I could say me, but everyone needs to make those calls home, no matter what the subject is, no matter what the reasoning is, because if parents are left out of it, then we can't say they have to do their job. We're not including them,
Right.
We're not telling them, so they need to be included, and those calls need to go home no matter what.
Can I comment on that? Because I agree with everything you're saying. I do want to distinguish between, a student who is found vaping in a bathroom from a student who is, let's say, skipping a class or their attendance is struggling. I think there are some times where the person who is responsible for calling home, generally it's the assistant principal who works with that student when that student is found vaping for disciplinary things. I think what happens, this will get a little bit to how we're rethinking some things for next year we can talk about in a bit, but in a large high school, when there are so many different adults that interface with different kids at the same time, and they're not organized in a way that it's a team working with that kid, a lot of times, and I'm guilty of this myself as a person who I taught in high school for 10 years, that oftentimes high school educators have the mentality that like, oh, well, someone else is on this, right? And I think that I don't hold anything against them for that. I felt like when I think about the calls I made home as an educator when I was a math teacher compared to the calls I make home now or as an assistant principal, as an administrator, like I look back and I'm ashamed at the lack of outreach that I did as a teacher, right? And I think that we need to structure things in a way that makes that communication easier for teachers to be doing that, where they have caseloads, a large number of caseloads, but we still need to be making the calls as teachers. And I think that's a push we are trying to make, leading up into February vacation, talking about that, and really starting to work with educators to think about how do we make those calls home. And it's not just an email, right? And it's not just a message. So those work for many families, that works fine. But when you don't get a response to that, we pick up the phone and have the conversation.
And I'll just add, as the committee knows, we had a issue on Monday that required an early dismissal due to a water main break outside of the building. And at the time, I talked to Mr. Bowen about our strategy for staff, and we decided the best thing that we could do is invite them to go home so that they could spend the time calling parents. And prior to that, Mr. Bowen referred to some work he had done with staff prior to February vacation around the emphasis on the need to make communication with parents. And we had worked, thankfully it was great timing, we had worked with Jonathan Ferrara and the union to set up a thing on people's individual cell phones, which the teachers were very much in favor of, where they basically hit a code, and so when they call a parent, the call is coming from their Revere High School extension.
Yeah, right.
It's not coming from their own cell phone. So we were able to say, go home, walk your dog,
Yeah.
have some lunch, and call some parents. So we're definitely, I think, making progress in that area. And I don't know if he's going to cover it tonight, but I know that Mr. Bowen and his team have been working with the building representatives of the Revere Teachers Association to put out a joint statement about how they see different ways that teachers can support changing the culture at the high school and different ways that administrators can support changing the student culture at the high school. And one of the big pieces in that is the calling home and really making the verbal connections with families.
Great.
Do you want to move us?
Thank you.
Sure.
Oh, did you have something? No, okay.
And the third item on our list, which is actually just kind of updating you on plans we're making. It is not a request for any of your money, but Dr. Kelly, Carl Svensson, and myself and Jonathan Farrar, we've looked into replacing several of the doors in the field house. Which it might sound surprising that is on the list, but currently in our field house we have two double doors near the cafeteria, and I think it's 4 on the other side. Only one of them is sort of like a modern, what I'd call fire door, right? Where it's got like the bar and you can push through, and when it's shut, no one can come in, but everyone can get out in case of emergency. Only one of those 6 doors are currently outfitted that way.
Really?
Yeah. And it's not a safety concern in the sense of what happens in a fire or anything like that, but when kids are choosing to not be in class, where do they want to be, right? And so they'll pop out, and then they'll all of a sudden the sneak in. PE teachers are taking attendance, they're trying to teach their classes, and all of a sudden someone sneaks through the door, and they're in this difficult spot of constantly being pulled from the instruction they should be delivering to the groups of students in their class to saying, oh, this kid, I know him, he has second period gym, not fourth period gym. What he like? And it's this back and forth. And so we are going to restructure those doors with the appropriate doors. We're also going to ensure that they have sort of the magnetic key fob, so that in an emergency, if we needed to get in, if the police or ambulance or, it's the gym, oftentimes we have situations, someone sprains their ankle, we need to get in emergency situations, we can do that. But once gym teachers, PE teachers will be able to meet their class at the door, take attendance, get them where they need to be, and then classes started, the door is shut, and just like any other class, a classroom teacher gets to shut their door and their class can begin. The PE teachers haven't had that luxury, right? And that really has been a challenge for us. And then it's a draw for students, right? You know, oh, I'm late to this class, I'm just going to swing by, and I know my friend has gym, I'm going to drop in and pop out, and all of a sudden, you've got 50 extra kids, you know, who shouldn't be there. So I think that is going to make a significant, I think it just significantly increase the PE teacher's ability to teach their classes. So, and only one out of those 6 doors currently have that modern door. They're all, you know,
Yeah.
so.
And 2 things I'll just add to that.
Sure.
One is that all of the emergency personnel in the city have a fob that gives them access to all of our buildings, and they will have, like, this is, you know, my fob is on my ID.
Yeah.
There's a fob in every police cruiser, there's a fob in the fire engine, so they'll be able to go in and use their fob to access those doors anytime they need to in any kind of an emergency, whether it's during the school day or if there's a basketball game at night or whatever the case may be. So in terms of a safety concern, that is definitely addressed. And the other point that I was going to make, I may have lost. Yeah.
Oh, you have Stacy Rizzo syndrome.
I think I do.
I just want to make sure I'm clear on the doors you're talking about. Are you talking about the internal doors or the ones that go out to the courtyard? The internal?
Internal.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I move on? All right. I think the fourth thing that we're proposing is 2 electronic programs that I think can help significantly in our ability to manage flow through the building. The first is a struggle that we have. First period, in terms of attendance, has unique challenges. Kids come to school at different times. With the transportation the way it's been, this has been a problem forever. I'm not trying to blame this on the bus situation, but we've got significantly many more kids walking to school now, you know, than we had in the past, and kids come late to school. The challenge is it's very hard for a first period teacher to know, right? Was Diane late to first period class because she goes late to school, or was Diane here 10 minutes before school began, went to the calf got breakfast, hung out with their friends, then went to the bathroom, then went to this bathroom, and is strolling into first period 40 minutes late?
That sounds a lot like Diane.
And so we are looking to pilot a system for the rest of this school year that will let us scan students when students come to school, they have their ID, scan in when they're late. After a certain period of time, we start scanning that, and it will interface with PowerSchool, so it will automatically mark students a certain way in PowerSchool, send the message home or whatever to their families who know that their student is late to school. But then it also lets the teacher know, oh, if you showed up to my class and you said, oh, I just got to school, you know, it'll print a little ticket that will kind of be their admission slip. We're kind of looking at a few different programs. There's another program related to this that is sort of an electronic hall pass. So right now we use hall passes on paper. There's a million challenges with that, separate from the fact that people bring paper into the bathroom and it's like, that's gross. There's also, you know, the kids can take some passes from a teacher, and this is a system that it'll all be on the phone. So the phone, you know, a student would be able to request a pass from their teacher. We then on the back end can kind of coordinate it to make sure that Carol and Diane, even if they're in separate classes, can't be given a pass at the same time, right? If there's a reason, maybe these 2 friend groups, there's some tension, or, you know, we're working with the family, and we're going to kind of play around with that. There are some ways that these 2 different programs might integrate with each other, and we're still looking that out, but that is sort of a subscription fee, and then, you know, for that technology, in addition to the syncing with PowerSchool. But the other thing with this is that, like, you know, if a student who you're in second period and is asking to go to the restroom or go somewhat, and the teacher can see, well, like, you've asked for 5 passes today so far, right? That gives us a better data to have conversation with kids, with families. What's going on if you're going to the bathroom 12 times a day, right? Either there's like a genuine medical situation, we should talk about that, or we should talk about the fact that you shouldn't be going to the bathroom 12 times a day.
May I? What happens when, I guess you made a distinction between, you know, a student who's late because of transportation reasons versus a student who maybe is just dilly-dallying prior to going to first period.
Right. The majority of which are in that category.
Right. So what's the response to those students where clearly the transportation issue is a legitimate reason for being late?
Yeah,
but how is that other conduct addressed?
Sure.
If I can just clarify, I think when what Mr. Bowen was saying, correct me if I'm wrong, about the transportation is, when we changed the transportation policy, fewer kids are coming on time on the bus. It's not that the buses are arriving late.
Correct. That's not the issue. I'm
It's
sorry.
that kids are coming late because they don't have to catch the bus at a
A
certain
certain
time.
time, okay.
Right. And in high school, many families, parent guardians are working, and someone's at work at 5 o'clock, and the kid wakes up at 6 and should be out the door by 7 and is there by, and we're not guardians aren't escorting their kids to school, right? And so there's oftentimes this struggle of like, he didn't leave on time. Do you know what I mean? And that happens, and we will have better data with who's actually coming late to school versus who's coming to school and not arriving to class on time. Right now, to a classroom teacher, that presents the same. And at a building level, across 2,200 students, that has a significant impact on the climate and who's where. Yeah.
I think to answer your question, so one thing we use now when assistant principals are sort of pulling data about student attendance, we have an intervention called Opportunity to Improve. It's basically after-school detention time. So I think about that difference between the choice to dilly-dally, which deserves sort of a consequence of made-up time, versus the arriving late because of not getting up on time and the problem-solving with a kid and a family. So I think that's how we would think about the difference between those two when we can tell the difference.
Makes sense.
Let's see. So, and then the last thing that we would like to propose, if we think about working with students high school students who have a variety of needs in terms of social emotional needs, in terms of their readiness to engage in school, in terms of perhaps their mental health at different times, and the sort of challenging situations they find themselves in, whether that's with peers, whether that's with teachers, whether that's with different adults. Often those problem-solving conversations to get to the root cause of what's going on, not often, all the time, those take time. And there are also very strong research-based ways in which adults can engage with kids to have those conversations. One is a particular model that I have worked with in a previous district and have had great success with. It's called the collaborative problem-solving model. I've put a link to it in here. It fits very, very nicely with a kind of our framework for restorative practices. But restorative practices is really rooted in when harm happens, how do we fix it? That it doesn't so nicely, that framework is appropriate to deal with students in all ways, but the collaborative problem-solving model is better for the kid who gets stuck on the way the teacher engages with him, or the kid who's having an issue with this particular person, not for this sort of generic harm, I'd call, right? Not response to a specific situation, but how do we problem solve the thing that you're skipping the class for? And so my proposal is I would really like to be able to get a core group of educators trained in this model that is really rooted in digging into kids' needs, kind of the different unsolved problems that we're seeing in their behavior, what those root causes are. We could spend hours talking about this model. It's a very strong model. And my hope would be to kind of like this train-the-trainer model. And if I can get up to about 40 people in the building, which really is less than a quarter of my staff. We've got 183 RTA members in our staff. So if I can get 40, that's still less than a quarter. But if I can get sort of 40 members, my administrators, social workers, counselors, and then different teachers in different roles, sort of trained up in this model, I think we can then, from then, train others and get many more educators sort of proficient in working with this model that I have seen done very strong, lead to very strong results. And so that is the kind of the ask is a little bit of this professional development support that would be working with the campus support staff, as you were mentioning, and other people. So those are some things. And I'll pause there, and then there's some ideas we're kind of thinking about for next year. We just kind of want to let you have a chance to process.
Anyone have any questions?
Mrs. Milbury Ellis.
I don't have any questions. I do look forward to looking further into this this program, but I think any time that you're working on building relationships with students, I'm a staunch advocate for the notion that if you can build a relationship with a kid, that is the root of everything. It's the root of all of the problems that we're seeing. It is the cure-all. I 100% believe it. So I think if this is something that will lead towards, establishing better relationships and deeper relationships with students and meaningful relationships, I think it's a wonderful thing and it's a positive thing. So I look forward to learning more about this. Thank you.
And I can't agree more, Mrs. Milbury Ellis.
Mr. Kingston has his hand up.
I'd like to make a motion to have pretty much all these items sent to Ways and Means to discuss and get a price on the doors and stuff like that. I know from experience and from talking to staff up here that the field house does tend to be somewhat of a hangout, so to speak, and I think the doors would help a lot. I think the electronic passes would be awesome. My only concern with that is I just don't see a lot of kids wearing IDs.
So there's 2 layers to that. So every student has an ID to enter the building. They do have to show that to get in. We have people at every door throughout the day. When students come in late to school, currently they're on paper signing in, but they show their ID and they get that checked. We have made a decision this year, in previous years, of the distinguishing between students having the ID on them and wearing the ID around their neck on a lanyard. The number of points of conflict that we have gotten into, whether it is, between administrator and student, teacher and student, security translator member and student, about not wearing the ID on the neck versus having it in their pocket. Generally speaking, the student who is not going to stop and give you their ID that they're wearing around their neck is also the same student who is not going to stop and gives you their name. They're in a state where they're not going to engage,
Right.
and I can count on one hand the number of times that I wish I was able to quickly see the ID of a student that they're wearing versus the number of times that I've wished more people were able to get to a place where they can get the kid engaging in the conversation to identify themselves. And I always like to say, all the student needs to be able to say is, I'm John Kingston, I'm a 10th grader, get Miss Falzerano. Like, I don't need that kid to engage all the time with the person who doesn't know them. We do need to set the standard that students are identifying themselves when asked, and then we have the appropriate response after. So I am very open to sort of the debate on whether wearing the ID is the thing. I do think with the electronic hall pass piece, the models that I've seen, kids can upload if they want like a picture, like their emoji. It can be synced through PowerSchool and with those IDs there, and it kind of turns an electronic ID. This would not be in place of the hard and fast ID that students carry on them when they're in the building.
Thank you.
I would second that motion put forward by Mr. Kingston.
And I can tell you that I thought of the thing that slipped my mind a minute ago about the gym doors. We actually have the funding for those in our facilities budget already. So it's the rest of the stuff that would really be looking for money for.
One more comment, if I may, about wearing the IDs. The only positive, well, not the only positive, but one positive aspect of wearing the ID, having the IDs visible, is just in the general sense of safety and security and identifying students and who's a student and who may not be, and that off chance, that slim chance that there's somebody in the school, a student, a young person who is not actually a student and who intends to do harm. So that's something to clearly consider. Thank you.
And this is a very realistic thing, that over the years, there have often been kids who would take the day off from East Boston High School and decide to come in here, and our kids going off into some other. It's almost a TikTok challenge, like, can I do it? Can I get away with it? And then brag about it later on, about how I got through. And so these are challenges that are not new.
Right.
And it's wonderful that we have the improvement in electronics and technology, that we can use that to keep our kids safe over a period of time.
And I do want to point out that at the point of entry, right, at the perimeter doors, so students come in the east wing and the main lobby,
Yeah.
and then around, at the start of school, the east wing door is closed, and students all then come through the main lobby. Students that are late to school, then IDs are checked when students come in, and then a student that is coming in late to school after that kind of rush has died down, they go to the front desk, they show their ID, and they check in. So I think that the East Boston student that you're talking about is strength around that perimeter piece of things is something that is what reduces that. I think that is something that we try to do.
Yeah.
And I'll just add one more thought, because I've spent a lot of time both doing first floor bathroom duty and walking
I was
around the
on the
high school in
third floor.
general. Yeah. I mean, just recently.
Recently, she's been very much there.
The kids think it's a hoot that I join them in the bathroom. But what I have noticed is when I do bump into kids, I don't even ask them for their ID anymore. I say, where are you supposed to be? Where's your schedule? And they take out their phone and show me what room they're supposed to be in. They all keep that information on their phones. And it's like more of a routine now than, before, even if we go back 10 years ago, nobody had a phone.
Oh, no.
So you would have to say, where's your ID? They would have to produce that, but they can show me their schedule. They can show me what room they're supposed to be in. I know if the teacher's absent, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot that they live through their phone.
Can I share a quick fun story?
Sure.
When we last year were trying with the gym situation of students coming in and out, we got a whole situation set up where we had different administrators at the door, and kids had to, particularly during lunch, that was the hardest time. Kids had to show on their Power School, like, it's quarter 3, what's your schedule? Do you actually have Miss Wells' class? And then, of course, they would get a screenshot from quarter 1 and bring that up. So it's little things like that they're very much on their phone and everything, right?
Okay, so moving on, if no one has any other questions, and we already had a motion and seconded by Mr. Kingston and Ms. Ellsbury Ellis. Let's take a roll call to move it forward.
Mrs. Stacy Bronson Rizzo,
Yes?
Miss Susan Gravelisi,
Yes.
Mr. John Kingston,
Yes.
Mrs. Aisha Milbury Ellis,
Yes.
Miss Carol Ty.
Yes.
Thank
Okay.
you all. We
The next-
appreciate the support. If
So
I
the
can,
next, I'm sorry.
can I add one more thing, Stacy? So you'll see
Go
that
for
Mr. Bowen put a couple of notes on the end of his slide, thinking towards next year. And I know he just wanted to forecast for the committee that he and his administrative team, this is for Caitlin and Chris, they're 7 months into their leadership. So they've had a lot of time, not a lot of time, to really assess what's going on and what they need. But they have been working with their administrative team to try to think about different ways of being. And I know one of the ideas that you have is to set up more of like a smaller schools within a school cohort model.
Yeah, thinking of academies, sort of.
Yeah. But even just like instead of having 5 assistant principals who are dealing with 2,200 kids, have a structure where you might have, and correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, but an assistant principal with 2 social workers, a guidance counselor, and maybe a couple of other support staff that they're still trying to work out in this house with these 500 kids. And then have the second assistant principal with these other 2 social workers and this other guidance counselor and these other support staff. Maybe these new security people that you're talking about would be assigned to these different houses.
Right.
And it would be like a 9 through 12 environment. So kids are in that house for their 4 years. Those relationships that you were talking about are established. You know what I mean? And there are more people keeping an eye on fewer kids, which will help make things work.
And working in a team together.
Yeah,
And I think that's
teams.
that's a
Right.
key piece that's missing in this building right now. I'm not saying collegiality is missing. I'm saying that having teams of adults who share ownership and responsibility for the group of students. Right now, some of the structures we have don't lend itself to that. So now everyone's working with everybody on the same X number of students, as opposed to being able to sit down on, this team meets down on Monday morning for an hour and a half and goes through that support team caseload. we don't really have the structure for that to happen efficiently now, and we don't have entirely the right positions to be able to be doing that, you know, and we are really kind of thinking through what are some of the models. We've spent probably a good 3 months in the end of the first semester doing research on the 50 largest schools in the state that are comparable to us, in addition to some smaller high schools that are, you know, smaller and not similar in size, but similar in population or have some interesting programming that we've liked. The administrative team sort of divided up and did some calls and some conversations with principals, and we really kind of researched what do high school leadership structures, what kinds of structures exist in the state and outside with some other schools, as well as what kind of student support staff structures. And the leadership structure and the student support structure needs to be integrated. In our school, it's not quite exactly that way. It was at one point, and we got bigger and we grew and things changed, and we need to kind of rethink that.
Yeah.
So we're in the process of really looking through a few of those different models.
And I think that you'll probably be coming before the committee around May with some asks for additional staff. Does that sound right?
That is a true statement, Dr. Kelly.
Okay. Mr. Kingston has his hand up.
When we were doing the interviews, we had the meet and greet with the Malden principal. That's how they do it in Malden. They have a team approach.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
he explained it pretty fully, and I thought it was really a great idea. I didn't think we had enough staff for it, but I think, you know, if we can get the hires and get what you need, I think it does. He talked about it at length, and I was kind of impressed with it, because like you said, it's instead of one person dealing with one, it's a
Right.
group of people and
it's-
many ideas and, you know.
And I think
yeah.
it's particularly important in the way that we support our English language learners who are coming to this country, who are learning language at the same time as their life has changed and they're in a new space. And the way that we are sort of intentional about providing that support to them in that team structure is something I think that is very much missing here. And I think that we can make some changes that really support that as well. Just kind of linking to Ms. Labolita's presentation yesterday.
Yeah, I was very surprised that we were 12th in the state.
Yeah, yeah.
That was kind of a
Right,
surprising
right.
number.
And our structure hasn't changed since we were not that
No,
large.
I agree, and
right?
thank you for your efforts, I mean that. Thank you.
I think that's it, Mrs. Rizzo. No other hands up.
Okay.
If I could
So-
just,
Oh, I stand corrected. Ms. Ty?
just one, there have been different iterations at the high school, and the one that we were talking about, and the different, keeping all the kids together and certain assistant principals, that always did seem to work the best. But circumstances with more and more kids coming in made it more difficult to do that.
Yeah.
So I think it's great that you're thinking about how to do that to support the kids. And to support the teachers, too.
Right.
Because and the administrators, it's a terrible, you know, responsibility. And we know that people come into teaching because they really like kids and they want to help them and they want to help them grow. And if they can't do it, it's equally frustrating for them as well as for the kids. So I think it's great. Thank you very much for a very lucid and empathetic presentation.
You're welcome.
I'm
Thank
very
you for
happy.
listening. We appreciate the support.
So I can't thank Principal Bowen and Deputy Riley enough for the work that they have done, whether it's curriculum, whether it's climate change, whether it's restructuring. We're talking about in a short 7 to 8 month period. I'm just amazed at the work, and I'm grateful for the work that they've been putting in, and I look forward to the work that they're putting in. But our next piece on the agenda, maybe if they could stick around for a couple of more minutes, maybe they'd be able to help us this way also. And it's the communications of what should or should not be shared. And I don't mean, with our conference in November, I just added to the conference of, for one of the workshops, what your superintendent wants to tell you but can't. So there's things that we want to know, but there's things that can't be told. And hopefully Dr. Kelly and our high school administration can talk to us about what communication can be shared, not only with us, but with the parents and the community.
I'll take a a try at it first. It's a little bit tricky. According to confidentiality laws, we're not supposed to tell you anything that's going on with individual students, and we're not supposed to tell parents anything that's going on with individual students. I try to communicate with you and with parents in general. Anytime there's a major situation, or anytime that there's a minor situation that I think people are going to portray as a major situation, I try to get that information out to the school committee in advance, because I know that you're going to be getting phone calls, and I want you to have the accurate information before people call you with the hyperbole that's often posted on Twitter and Facebook and places like that. And I know that Mr. Bowen, along with most of our principals, are really good about working with us on when does the communication need to go to parents, when does it need to go to parents and staff, when does it need to go to just staff, when does it need to go to parents, staff, and students. We talk those things through and talk about what we think the impact of a situation is going to be on each of those groups in determining when to put information out. It has become really difficult for us to balance the legal responsibilities of not putting information out there that we're not supposed to, but informing the public and the school committee when something happens with a truthful accounting, so that they're not forced to rely on an untruthful accounting, especially with social media. And, you know, we're talking about the phones that are attached to everybody's hands these days. They're not just phones, they're also recording devices and video machines. And, you know, things get captured and taken out of context, as we all know, routinely in life. And the same thing happens to us in a high school environment, which is just a microcosm of life. So I can't say specifically I can tell you this or I can't tell you that. I can try to tell you as much as I can with vague information. If there's something that gets out that we know it can be traced back to an individual student, then I'm less likely to say something to you, because I really am violating that student's confidentiality. I'm more likely to say something to you if I can say 2 students at the high school got into a fight. You know, if there's word out on social media or other places saying that Chris Bowen did something inappropriate to Deputy Principal Riley, I'm less likely to email you about that, because I would be violating Chris Bowen's confidentiality. I don't know, do either of you want to add?
I think this also for us, this also comes into play a lot of times with families who want to know what is the discipline for for the other student involved.
Yeah.
You know, and we can't talk about that. You know, I can talk about that student, that family's student and their discipline. And that I can talk about in general what discipline might be for these situations, but I can't say, oh yeah, your student was suspended for 1 day and the other student was suspended for 2 days because this was we can't get into that. And people, right, I feel I would be as frustrated as a parent not hearing that information, and at the same time, flip it, if I were the parent hearing that the principal is sharing the discipline record of my student, that also is wildly inappropriate. And so that we on the school level sort of deal with that a lot in terms of when conflict happens, well, what's going to happen and what's the discipline? We can't talk about that.
And I'll just add, you know, things have changed a lot in recent years. The Massachusetts general laws around discipline have changed in recent years. And that creates, I think, a lot of angst in the community, because we have parents and others who are used to, if you do X in high school, you get suspended or you get expelled. And really what the law says right now is, unless there's a weapon or drugs with intent to distribute involved in a situation, then our job is to try to mediate that without excluding the student from the school experience. That means not suspending and not expelling. And we try to do that. We've been working with North Suffolk on diversion programs. We have been creating our own diversion programs in some cases, especially where vaping is involved. And making, if there's any other drugs or alcohol, that kind of thing. Our social workers have been phenomenal, as has Ms. Herwig, who's taken over our health and wellness program in terms of creating different programs for students to engage in. And what we do is we take them out of their regularly scheduled day and they engage in some intense intervention, sometimes for 1 day, sometimes for 2, 3. It really depends on what the situation is. In every case, the guardians of that child are notified and they know what the discipline is. As Mr. Bowen said, we are reluctant to share that beyond because we're not allowed to legally. But despite the changes to the law, we do still have discipline policy at all of our schools, and we do follow it. And when we find that there have been recent rulings on a couple of situations, or I should say a few legal opinions that have come out recently that say the interpretation of the change to the law, the most recent change to the law, does enable us to move towards suspension or exclusion if there is a chronic situation, a chronic problem that's really disrupting the school. And so Mr. Bowen and Ms. Riley and I have been talking about that a lot, in particular with a few kids who really have been disruptive by not going to class, by coming to school and not going to class. And they've been in touch with their families and have shared with them that we just can't tolerate it anymore. And now that we have the legal precedent on our side, we can move toward, if necessary, excluding some of those kids. Because we are, in the end, a learning institution. And we are here for teaching and learning. And if people are coming here for any reason other than that, then we have to, help them find the place where they belong.
Anyone have any questions?
Sorry, I'm going to add one more thought there. When people have questions, they are welcome to call whoever the appropriate educational leader is, the school principal, the assistant principal, myself. We'll certainly try to get back to everybody.
So, Dr. Kelly, my thoughts are, and I appreciate everything you all said, and I get it, I truly get it. But perhaps with our website and with the communication director, maybe there could be some type of reel done that explains what you just said to us. So that parents know they're not just being passed by, but there are laws and regulations around all of this. So I mean, I'm not going to say most of them aren't going to the website. They're going to just believe what they want to believe on the street. But for those that will listen and want to learn, if something can go out district-wide.
I think.
Well,
I think that's a great idea. We can, what we can try to do is like a one-pager about how school discipline has changed, something like that. Send it out in multiple languages. I think that's a great idea.
Okay.
Ms.
That would
Milbury
help.
Ellis has her hand up.
With respect to communication and transparency, I know that we can't speak to individual instances, but when there's an uptick in say, fights, right? A few weeks ago, there was an uptick where there were several instances on one day or within a short period of time. In that instance, I think a statement should come out from the school speaking to an uptick within the culture of this is what we're seeing, whether it's violence or aggression or that type of thing, and this is how we're addressing it. This is what we're doing. I think you may be doing all the right things here behind these closed doors, but if we want to help to dispel some of the mistruths that are out there that cause a whole secondary set of issues, then we can give that information out. I know at the moment you all have 101 things on your plates, and it's just a matter of dealing with those. But at some point, if in those instances, we can send something out about, there has been, we've had several instances of aggression. This is how we're dealing with it, and put it out there. I think that may help to alleviate some of the issues we're having, without getting into specifics, but to say, hey, we hear you, we know that you're concerned, we know that you're talking about this kind of stuff, we want to let you know we're dealing with the issues and we're addressing it. I think that may do some help.
Okay, if no one else has anything. Number 2 was how many SROs, if needed, and how they are utilized. I think we've already heard that Chief Callahan said there's no way right now that he can give up another person. And then knowing the strategies and initiatives that our administration at the high school wants to implement, does anyone want to add to it?
I spoke to Chief Callahan on Monday during the council meeting, and my suggestion to him was, while I understand and totally agree that he can't give us someone off the shift, I would like to, in the short term, hire a police officer to be at the school. I appreciate Principal Bowen's ideas about hiring people, but that's going to take some time, I think. And in the short term, just having an extra officer, whether it's a detail or overtime slot, that's something for Chief Callahan to decide. But to have an extra officer at the high school to just help with, keeping order until we can get these folks hired. A lot of people don't want to work today, unfortunately, and hiring is a difficult process. I realize we're upping the salary, which I think is great, but you still may struggle to hire. So I think in the short term, to add a police officer at the high school, either on detail or overtime, that does not interfere with the shift. Based on my conversation with Chief Callahan, he said it's our money to do what we wish, and he would have no problem with us hiring someone as long as it didn't interfere with his shift work. So that's the direction I would like to go in, and that's my suggestion here. Thank you.
Okay, and I thank you for your suggestion, and I mean no disrespect at all, but I think that's a conversation that Dr. Kelly and the chief should have had, or it should have been initiated between the two of them. But also, that would be something that would have to go to Ways and Means for the next budgetary. And my personal feeling is that too would have to be on Ways.
And I can just
But
say that
that's my
I
opinion.
did have that conversation with the chief, and what he said to me was that they didn't have the capacity in the police department right now, that they were actually down 6 full-time positions, that they have really struggled to fill. They've offered jobs to 3 or 4 different people, he mentioned, who subsequently didn't take them, and that they're just really stretched too thin to think about putting a 4th officer in the schools right now. But Ms. Milbury Ellis had her hand up as well.
So 2 points. One, I think we need some clarity from the chief on what his position is with respect to this creative idea of bringing in a 4th SRO officer, which I wholeheartedly support. I embrace the idea of having a female officer, again, for purposes of building relationships with these kids. Aside from all of the other functions that the SRO officers perform in the schools, it's very important during this time in particular that students have a positive relationship with law enforcement. And the more exposure they have to that and the more opportunities they have for that is better in the long run for society. So I'm all for that. I was really hopeful to have a woman officer, especially for our female students, to have that bond. And so if there is a way to make that happen in this creative proposition that Mr. Kingston has mentioned, I think that should be further explored. Thank you.
And I have to agree, I really, as much as I love the 3 we have now, we definitely need that woman on board.
I know that the chief is supportive of the idea. I will talk to him again about it, and I'll mention Mr. Kingston's proposal or what the chief said to Mr. Kingston and see where he is. I'll get more information on that and follow up again.
May I make a comment on this as
Sure.
well? When I think back on this year, and even past years that I've been at the high school, the number, I can't think of a time, like, I can't think of a time where I've been in the moment saying, oh, we need another police officer to help in this situation, right? I can think of plenty of times that I go to Joe Singer, I probably talk to Joe Singer 3 or 4 times a day about different things popping up, about different kids he has relationships with. Can he check in with this kid? Can he do that thing? But in the moment, in the heat of a moment of things going on in the building, I've never been in a situation where I'm thinking, oh, I need multiple more law enforcement support. I've had multiple situations where I need more people, more adults that can be with kids in the moment, right? That can be supervising these kids, that can take this kid for a walk, that can get that kid away from this kid and kind of sit down and de-escalate. And that's not to say that an SRO could not be doing that work, especially when they have that relationship. And I think, Mr. Kingston, you bring up a good point about, like, in the meantime, before we have hiring takes time, right? And how to more adults to engage with kids is a good thing. I just want to be clear that the biggest struggle we've had has been number of adults to be with kids in those times and to be a presence in the building. That is what I'm in the moment saying, God, I wish I really had that, you know? And so I just want to clarify that, and I think that the work Joe has done, particularly with the relationships he's developed through his boxing program, the number of kids that are looking for him all the time, you know, for different things. Like,
Mr. Kingston has a hand up.
This is just a stopgap measure. I would like the 4th SRO, but I understand that I've talked to the chief a number of times, and he said, John, I can't swing it right now. This is just a stopgap measure until you get your people in place. I'm not saying, you know, I mean, I certainly don't want us to be paying every day for someone that you know, but in the meantime, in my humble opinion, you just don't have enough bodies. You've said it yourself. So this gives you a body, someone that's potentially had SRO training, and could really, you know, begin to do a job that maybe in the fall. There are 2 candidates right now coming out of the police academy in a few weeks. Another 4 are going. So possibly, you know, maybe in the fall or early winter, we may be able to get that 4th SRO officer, you know, depending on staffing at the police station. Right. But I know the chief, and I was very clear, and I know what he said, and I know we had a, you know, good conversation back and forth. As long as we're willing to pay the freight and it doesn't interfere with his shift, it shouldn't be a problem. So I know Dr. Kelly's going to have that conversation, but I just think in the short term, if you're able to hire someone in 6 weeks and you said to us, hey, I'm all set, I don't need that extra body, you know, walking the halls or whatever you have them doing, then that's fine. But in the meantime, you're definitely shorthanded, and I think you could use the help. Thank you.
Any
No.
other questions or comments?
I was just going to say, no other hands up.
Okay, and I know I received the MOU for the SROs through email. It looks like the standard MOU for the state.
It is. We use the state's model language, and it was actually Captain O'Hara and Dr. Gallucci who took the lead on that. But it is the state's model language with, you know, the town change, the city change to Revere and pieces like that.
No, it's definitely standard, so that's a good thing. I know at this time, I don't have any questions or comments, and I'm going to, before we adjourn, I'm going to open it up to everyone to see if there's something they'd like to add.
Miss Milbury Ellis.
I just want to add that I'm thankful for this conversation, that I think it's important that we have these conversations routinely and get kept up to par with the progress that's being made and what we can do to support you along that way. I think it's important for parents to listen to these types of conversations, to have the same types of conversations and to add input. So I just want to extend my gratitude for this forum this evening. Thank you.
And I think we all can appreciate the hard work that you've been doing since day one. And that includes you, Dr. Kelly. I'm not leaving you out.
Thank you.
So with that being said, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Second?
Second.
Motion. We have Ms. Milbury Ellis and Mr. Kingston, and thank you everyone for your time and effort, and have a great night.
Thank you.